So thanks for being with us. We may get a few more people coming in shortly, and we'll bring them up to speed as we go. We'll be putting this on our YouTube channel, and that may be how you're seeing this right now. But if you want to share this with colleagues later, we'll send the link out to you so you'll have that. Or if Jimmy says something fascinating in a little while that you want to go back and remember just how he said it, you can watch the recording of it. But again, thanks for being with us. Just very quickly, my name is Richard Moore. I'm Executive Director of Texas Community College Teachers Association. We work with the faculty and the administrators at all of the two-year colleges across the state of Texas, and provide a number of different services, but among them is helping identify key and especially strategic resources for our members and our institutions to help them be more effective in their work. And our now president this year, Patrick Gilbert at Lone Star College, contacted me last year and said, "Hey, there's this new thing out that I've just discovered. You need to talk with these folks. They're onto something here." And he was talking about PowerNotes and introduced me to Todd Russell. And so Todd and I started talking about what they do and the intersection that has with what our members are working on. And we really saw an interesting alignment that's different from other products that are out there in this space. And so we thought, we found that we were in a position that we could add some value by acting as a statewide consortium to offer pricing that would be attractive to our members, kind of better than they could get at any given institution on their own. And that's where we say, if we can add some value, then we like to do that. If we can't, it might help with some introductions, but we said, no, I think we could do more than that. So if you're interested in what PowerNotes has to offer, and you're looking for any sort of benefits that might come through a consortium agreement, be sure to follow up with Todd afterwards. We'll share that contact information with you so you have it. So I could go on about all this, but I want to get into the meat of the discussion as quickly as we can. So Todd Russell with PowerNotes has been our point of contact, and I believe would be the point of contact you all would want to reach out to first. So Todd, why don't we just start out, if you could introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and PowerNotes, and then we can get into all the bells and whistles that PowerNotes offers our members.
Terrific. Thanks, Richard. And thanks everybody for the time today. It's great to be with you all. As somebody alluded to a little bit earlier, we're a relatively new company. PowerNotes was founded in 2017 by Wilson Sue. Our company is located in Chicago. And so Wilson's story, I'll just tell you kind of the real high level overview of how PowerNotes came to be. Wilson did his undergrad, I think in the mid 90s, early 90s. And then he went back to graduate school later on in his career. And in that time, most of what was going on in academia and in education had transitioned from print to digital. And he had some real struggles with research and writing, and he was used to a real different set of tools that he used in the print space. And he wasn't happy at all with what was out there and available at that time. And so in the back of his mind, he was always thinking about building PowerNotes, which really facilitates digital reading, digital writing, the transition to writing. There's all kinds of little interesting pieces to PowerNotes. And so he finally did that in 2017. And Jimmy came on board, I think just about a year before I did. I'm one of the business development folks at PowerNotes. I live in Arizona. And yeah, it was really fun for me to be able to have discussions with Richard. We're used in about 55 different higher education institutions across the country, all the way from freshman writing all the way up to graduate writing and law schools. So we're excited for the opportunity that we have here today to talk to you all a little bit about PowerNotes and show you how it works. And so with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Jimmy Fleming, who is in Brooklyn, New York today.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much, Todd. And I'll say a few moments about myself before I grab the screen and show you PowerNotes. And while I try to do it at the same time, I should say, that's often a challenge. I came to PowerNotes after a career in publishing. I worked for a traditional textbook publishing company. I was a composition specialist. And I say that because when I first saw PowerNotes demoed, I was not employed by PowerNotes at the time, but I was working for another ed tech company, and we were at a writing conference, and Wilson had grabbed center stage and was presenting PowerNotes to a group. It was a writing program administrators group. And the first thing that I noticed, I looked at it, I thought, he's onto something. He's got a smart thing going on. He kept talking about the research process, and emphasizing that over and over. But I saw something else. I saw that PowerNotes was an extraordinarily powerful reading tool, and reading was an important part of the conversation that was taking place in composition programs. The idea that reading and writing needs to be taught, or should be taught, interchangeably, and because they're interactive activities and interconnected activities. And PowerNotes had something going on that I had not seen anywhere. After 30 years working for a traditional publishing company and all the media that those companies had developed, nobody had gotten a hold of the idea of how to teach or how to show the reading processes. So I say that as a backdrop, because when I do show you a little bit about PowerNotes, I'm going to get in the weeds a little bit, because I still see the teaching moments where writing instruction and reading instruction can be a part of what PowerNotes delivers. Let me go quickly through a few things I want to set up here. I'll start with this screen, and Todd, I've asked Todd to put these URLs in the chat room, but mostly these are the landing places where you want to find information about PowerNotes. The first is our home page. The second is our help page, and I'll show you these in just a few moments. And the third line here is both Todd and my email addresses, and you can contact either one of us with follow-up questions. As we mentioned, questions about usage with your organization, please contact Todd directly. I'm more of I do some of the same work that Todd does, but I do a lot of sort of faculty engagement type work. Todd gave you a brief overview. I'm going to hit a couple highlights here. He mentioned that we started in 2017. It was considered a productivity tool for researchers initially. And by that, we meant that the PowerNotes could be used independent of the classroom by any student or any user who is doing research, from the novice to the professional. We are in place now at more than 50 educational institutions, and this is just a brief list, and including a large number of our institution partners are law programs. Now that's important because in the story of Wilson, our founder, Wilson went from an engineering background at Cornell as an undergraduate and one graduate level degree. And when he went back to school, he went back as a lawyer. So a lot of the work that he had to do was very informed work about how lawyers read and write and think. And so PowerNotes is an outgrowth of that. It'll show pretty evidently. What PowerNotes can do is as we began to develop the product for the undergraduate market primarily, we began to focus on these three key areas where we know that PowerNotes can help students and researchers, both from an instructional point of view, but also from independent use. PowerNotes is going to improve digital reading, and it's going to make it visible. And I'll show you points along the way when we get to the live demo. Then the first part of PowerNotes is a browser extension download, which makes it possible for us to make use of, or for students to make use of, anything that they can open up in a browser. And that's everything from all of the open web stuff, HTML language behind every URL, as well as all of the resources in the library databases that students already have access to, but they might not be making use of. Open instructional resource materials, ebook platforms. We're in about 40, we can work with about 40,000 different domains, and a domain is everything from JSTOR to New York Times to Wikipedia. Anyway, so the PowerNotes is a powerful tool. If you can open in the web browser, PowerNotes is going to work. Now, the second part of PowerNotes is the web application, and that's where we'll dive into a little bit and show you how PowerNotes is a powerful organizational tool. So after the student has done reading, taken notes, and done stuff with his research processes, he can then move to the web and begin to organize his notes in a fashion that makes it easier to transition from the reading for research element stage of the writing process to the actual composition stage, or the delivery stage, or the presentation stage. And quickly, if you could see my screen, I didn't even stop to ask, but make sure that everybody can see my screen. If not, please put it in the chat. I little hiccup there sometimes. Okay, we talk about the processes of doing research and the processes of reading for research, and there's an interconnectivity in all of that. This looks like a linear chart, and we all know that it's not. It's not linear at all, but nevertheless, for the points of representation, this is a good way for us to show you where in the processes of reading for research, PowerNotes can be an active part of the process. Basically, what we're looking to do is streamline the processes so students do not have to go back and forth between multiple digital platforms, multiple digital tools, and his or her own research methods in order to facilitate the reading process in the most streamlined fashion. What we've learned from students who've taken PowerNotes and used it is that basically they see it as a time saver, an effort saver, and a way to improve their thinking about how reading is done. I can address that briefly in a moment too. So on this page, if you look at this is basically, I've got two lines here, two layers. The first is more of the traditional reading for research processes, and where the student is researching for a topic and is going to develop all the topic, find sources, evaluate the sources, read the sources, take notes on the sources, draft, etc., and then produce something as a final draft. You'll see the outline of PowerNotes, this little dotted line. This is where PowerNotes is going to help very directly in all stages of that process. Underneath the first level is the second level. We also know that about 50% of the students discover PowerNotes is useful outside of the class in which it's assigned. So they sign up to take it as a research tool, and they end up using PowerNotes as a note-taking and study creation tool. Okay, if you take a look at that overview, and then add this layer, we just want to represent all of the sort of other things that PowerNotes is going to either make redundant or not as necessary. PowerNotes is going to help students avoid having to use multiple platforms, multiple digital products in order to facilitate the reading and writing process. Hopefully I'll show you that in a moment and it'll make sense and clearer sense to you. And then last, I want to point out something that's we're really happy about. This is just happening quite literally as we speak this week and last week. We're hearing some of the returns on a study that was done by partners at the University of Arizona. At the University of Arizona, over 500 students in an array of classes, everything from first year writing to writing across the curriculum courses, and in classes taught by both teachers and librarians. PowerNotes was used and with an eye towards what would be the outcomes, how would students receive the product, and where would they find PowerNotes to be the most useful. And this is their returns. This is what their first pass at the research data is showing to them. That PowerNotes is going to help in these cross-disciplinary areas. It's where students struggle a lot, primarily in identifying relevant evidence, returning to those sources, taking evidence from the notes that they've collected, synthesis, which the folks at University of Arizona have coined is the sweet spot of doing research. And then last but not least, the processes of citing evidence and protecting the sources that they're using. So PowerNotes is going to help at all of those stages along the way. Okay, that's really it for an overview. I'm going to move things around a little bit and go to an online demo. So let's bear with me for a second. When you sign up with PowerNotes is, as I said, it's part of a two-part, and the first part of PowerNotes is the creation of a browser extension. To get a browser extension, you go to this home page and you would download the browser extension used in one of these tabs. We also work with Microsoft Edge and Bing, etc. But those choices will redirect you to the Chrome store anyway. So mostly PowerNotes right now is most often used on Chrome or Firefox. We, at the moment, are not able to work on Safari, but we're working on it, and hopefully we'll have that capability by the end of the year. Okay, you download your browser extension by clicking on this sort of thing. Once I've downloaded the browser extension, it opens in my browser tray. And I'm going to stop here just to show you one of the first places where students or users get a hiccup, and it's a very easy solution to it. PowerNotes, when enabled on your browser, will stay enabled on your browser until you turn it off. And it's real simple to do. If I hit that little button there, you'll see I open up this little toggle that allows me to turn PowerNotes off. I can do that and it'll get PowerNotes out of the way. And by out of the way, what I mean is, if you see down here at the bottom, PowerNotes is enabled on this browser. This little button, this little icon moves around. That is, if I click on it and open it, is a sidebar. And the sidebar allows me to go in and work on the project that I'm working on and see the work that I've collected. We're going to choose another project and I'll show you how that sidebar works. Okay, the second thing I want to point here from this home page is this link to the educators page, and that will take you to this page, which is an array of all of our instructional video materials and support materials, etc. And that was on the URLs that I had on that first screen. I'm not going to spend too much time here because I want to jump into the product. Okay, so when you create a project in PowerNotes, PowerNotes is available to anybody in a free account. And of course, we talk to schools and users about a premium account, or for sale item. The free account is open to anybody at no cost. There's a couple of differences that you need to know between free and what we call the premium. In the free account, you can only use PowerNotes for one project. And if you see in my homepage here, I'm not going to scroll all the way down, but probably about 40 or 50 different projects in operation here. That's important to know. The freemium account of PowerNotes enables a student to use multiple projects, and it's powerful to know that, because there are other elements along the way where the free and premium accounts are distinguished. Okay, when I create a project, I simply go down here. The way that PowerNotes is constructed is that I will create an account, and it pops up as a project. I've named it in this case before getting started here. I just created a project and I named it for this conversation we're having today. By default, we don't know what a researcher is going to do. So by default, we create and start every new project with two generic topics, background and new topic. Now, there is a way in which you can go in ahead of time and preset the project, that if you have an organization, you know what it's going to look like. And in a moment, I'll show you how that works. But most students who are using PowerNotes on their own or by instruction in class are not necessarily going to know what their outline is going to be. Now, as teacher might take PowerNotes and guide a student through a certain kind of rubric or a heading or an organization, and that will become important from an instructional side. But for the most part, when students are using PowerNotes, they're going to start not knowing what their research is going to deliver to them. So they need to really find a starting point. We're just going to start with just these two generic topics, and I'll show you how the organization and the outline will grow as the student goes through and does some work. Okay, let's say that I found this is an article that is interesting to me and I want to take some notes on it. That's simple. I simply go through any part of this article. I find something that's of interest to me. I use my cursor to highlight what's of value. And when I release my cursor, you'll notice this box pops up, and this box pops up and it corresponds to what you see in the sidebar. It's the title of my project, and it's the titles of the two units or topics that I have just begun my work with. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with this note, so let's just drop it in the background. I click on that button, and the next thing that happens is the note card pops up. And this was the sweet spot that I discovered when I saw PowerNotes delivered, because this is where reading takes place and where note-taking takes place. Note-taking and the connection between the processes of reading and annotating is the linchpin, is the undergirding of where critical reading skills are going to develop. So it may be a point here too where teachers will instruct a student on what this note should look like. Perhaps it's nothing more generic than I just want to notes and come back to and read later. It doesn't really matter. It's an unlimited field here, and I can put in whatever I want. And I'll show you how you can get back to the note card too and add information as you go along. Just for the sake of the demo, I'm going to make it kind of perfunctory and short and sweet. That's what I want to say for now. I'll click the save button, and then I can go on reading. Now, you might notice here one of the first important things that's happened is we've eliminated the distraction that takes place in digital reading in this environment today. Most students will do kind of what I do. They have multiple tabs open up, and they'll go back and forth between their tabs. They might open a Word document, they'll copy something here, and they go over and dump it into the Word document. And they might be careful to come back and capture the citation information or the URL or anything else which will tell them what this quote is all about, but they might not. And they might not protect the quote. They might go back to that Word document later, and after using it for a long period of time, they cannot distinguish what they have written themselves and what they've captured and saved from the reading that they've done. We're going to make that a moot point, because if you'll notice over here in my note card in the sidebar here, we think of these now as digital note cards because they do sort of resemble that. I've got the quote that I've highlighted, and it's protected by the quotation marks, and I cannot change that. So the quote over here that I highlighted is protected and saved over here. This is a link back to the source. So when I'm on this page, using this note card, I can always link back to this document. Even if I'm not on this page, I can click this link and it'll take me back to this source. Let me go through a couple of other examples and then stop and show you something else that's going on the note cards. But just for the sake of quickly moving through, I'm going to add a new note to this new topic, and I'm going to take further notes here. And if you notice what's happening over in the sidebar, I now have two note cards that I've collected in two different topics, and I have it in two different colors. And that's just a helpful tip for those who want to make use of color distinctions to be able to show the difference, and it corresponds to the topics in my outline. Now, let me show a couple things here. This topic here is something that I can change very quickly. Let's just say I've decided I'm going to be working a little bit on a reparations project. So let me call this an individual reparations account, IRAs for short. I can change my topics simply and easily by doing that. Now, again, I'm pointing out that this is the quotation mark that I've highlighted is saved over here, protected by quotes. And we've got a link back to the source. There's other things that are going on in this note card I want to stop and share with you. If you notice, this little image looks like a quotation mark that's hollowed out, and we call it a confirm citation button. It exists over here and it exists over in the note card too, the same little quotation mark. If I click on that in either place, what it does then is open up the citation information that we've collected automatically in the background. This is important to note because most students will not take care when they're going through an article because they're not sure they're going to make use of this article. And they'll do a lot of reading. They'll come back later and probably try to find the sources they want to use. And at that point, it becomes a needle in a haystack concept. They may not find the right source. They're going to do one of two things there, unfortunately. They'll either stop using the source despite the fact that it might be perfect for their writing purposes, or they might not attribute and cite the source properly. Once again, we're going to make it seamless and easy for them to do this all in one place, and it will never be disassociated from the note cards as they use PowerNotes. So what you see over here now, when I clicked on the citation button, is I have the URL, which is going to keep me linked back to the source, and that's going to be used in my citation generation as well. I have the option to change my citation format as well. The default setting in PowerNotes is MLA, but if I click on this little drop down, I can take MLA, I can change my documentation model to something else. This list is not exhaustive, nor is it intended to be. So if you see as a document, if you see that we're missing a documentation standard or model that we should be using, we can add it. It's important to note that our citation generator is based on an instance of Zotero, which we have on housed on our server. So this kicks out to Zotero and comes back to us almost instantaneously with citation information processed by Zotero. And we're going to save it here on this note card. A couple other things I want to point out very quickly. It is the student's responsibility to make sure that the information is correct, and we just put this disclaimer there as a reminder. That's not always done, but it's there. If the student needed to double check any information on an HTML page, you'd click this button and it would open up the opportunity for us to see the metadata behind the citation. I'm not going to go through that process right now, but if I were to make changes there, I would simply hit the refresh button and we would save that citation. If this looks like it's all that I need to have done here, then I'll click save. And that means that on this source, from this point going forward and retroactively, anytime I'm on this page, I will create a note card that has the citation information collected and saved. So all in one place, I have my notes, which are editable. I can always come back to my notes. This is where reading is proved to be recursive. I can come back here after reading another source material. It might be that this quote has a greater value to me now than it did when I first saved it. Or it might be that I think there's something else more important. I need to go back and check it out. I can link back out to it. Okay, and there's something else going on over here. You'll notice this other button after I clicked on the citation thing. This other button over here is the place where we've created the opportunity for students to begin to practice information literacy skills, and to take notes on the sources and the source credibility, reliability, etc. At the moment, this is not set up as a default setting of any sort, so the student would have to change this on the fly, but perhaps she's being directed by her teacher or by a librarian to do source evaluation based on some of the more prescriptive means that we know of. And when I say we at PowerNotes know about, you guys would know a heck of a lot more, I am sure. But the more common evaluation criteria that we've heard include the ones that are referred to often by the acronyms. So there's CRAP, there's SIFT, there's ACT UP, there's MRAD. Right now, the student would have to create those source evaluation fields on her own, but she can do that easily. So CRAP, if I remember it right, credibility, I can add another one over here. Is it reliability? I'm sorry, I'm not spelling it very well. Okay, anyway, I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but you can see what I've done here is now I've created these fields. So this is where a student would then come back in for this source and begin to take notes and leave notes on the source. So we are practicing those skills that are often taught by librarians, most often by librarians, but sometimes by teachers too. So that the student can begin to develop an idea and those kinds of ideas that are related to evaluating sources. I'll show you how this can be done in another way in just a few moments too. There's another way to come at this. Okay, this is what's going on for the most part in the sidebar, but there's a couple quick things I just want to show you quickly. If I'm doing research and I find an article that is important to me, but I either do not have the time to read it now or it requires more effort than I can make, but I want to save this and come back to it later or perhaps consider it later, I can bookmark it. Simple enough. With that simple toggle up at the top of the sidebar that looks like a bookmark, I will save this page now in what we think of as an intentional bookmark. This is very different and distinct and much more friendly and much smarter than what most of us do. This is my bookmark page, and I don't know how many there have any value to me whatsoever anymore. I go through it periodically just to eliminate stuff because it's pretty wonky. It looks unusable. So this is an intentional bookmark, and it's going to save this source and a link to this source, as you see right here, in the project that I'm working in. So I am intentionally saving it to a place where I'm going to do some reading later. Might be a reason why I'm reading it. I want to read it. I can save it here. Spell, and once again, this acts as a note card, much like our text note cards are. Now, while I'm here, I'll show you something else that you can do with any of these note cards. It's particularly relevant for the bookmarks. I can make use of this button, which is on every note card. This 3 toggle button, and I can do one of several things. This card has no value to me. My focus has changed, my research process has changed, and my research question has changed. I'm going somewhere else with this. I don't need this anymore. Delete it. I can move it to another topic in this outline. Now, this outline is not very expansive, so it's not a really good demonstration for, in real terms, what can happen here. But if this were a very developed or outline, I could move this note card somewhere else where it more properly belongs. Or perhaps this is something that's of great value to me, but it's also going to be useful for me for my capstone project that I'm working on. So I can copy this note card and send it over to another project, and in that project somewhere in the project organization. And I'll stop here to make one comment. This is where the difference between free and premium has some great value too, because the free side, the student would not be able to copy and move to another project. The premium version of PowerNotes, obviously this is an unlimited list of projects available to me. So this copy and moving across different projects is paramount in the premium side. One more quick thing I want to show you before we get off of this page. PowerNotes also has we have the ability to capture an image, and I can do that in one of 2 ways. Here's the photograph. Perhaps I want to save it for this article. I do that with a right click. Real common process. Everybody understands that. Students do, but we've added this option inside PowerNotes, so I could save this image directly to PowerNotes. And in this case, I'm also going to show you how you can add a topic on the fly by creating that button. I open up a new topic tab, and I can create and name that tab right now. And I'm just going to call it images for the sake of this. And then I can save this image to that section of my project. We're going to treat it like we do the other note cards. So I can come back over here and I can take notes and click and save. Now, perhaps this is one little wrinkle in PowerNotes that I think we're going to solve by the end of the year, but we're not there yet. Students will learn, or librarians particularly will teach them, and so will teachers, that not always do HTML pages capture the copyright information for photographs and images. If I were to click the button for this, it would give me the citation information for the Atlantic article, but not necessarily for this photograph. So there's a workaround to that for the short term. We're working on the idea of capturing the metadata behind both the image and the article, but right now that's very complicated, and we only capture the metadata for the article. So the other option I have here, and students will become used to, is using a web clipper, and I might come back in here and capture this image plus I'm not doing a very neat job of this, but plus the citation or the caption or whatever is linked below. That's a practice that probably has to be taught, but nevertheless, students will become aware that there's different copyright information for text versus certain images. Okay. This is also an opportunity where students who are working with source material, but they're not using with text material that can be copied in a direct thing. So we'll use the web clipper for charts, graphs, etc. I would simply hit this button here and come over here and capture this and create the note card and save it just as I was doing everything else. And go about my reading. Now, what we're going to reinforce one point. This is what's happening here is I'm doing a lot of work without ever leaving my computer screen. There are fewer distractions as a result of using PowerNotes. And there's a lot of work getting done. And one of the things that students will not understand, but they will when they use PowerNotes, is they are actually engaged very deeply in a lot of work and a lot of writing at this stage. And they're not thinking about themselves as writers yet. They're readers, they're researchers. One of the ways that writing can get done on this page, or two, so I'll point out this note card. The blank note card is open on the sidebar, and it's at each topic. So I can come in here and take notes. And it might be that I've got primary research that I'm going to record here. And I can do that. Or it might be that I have begun to practice what teachers want to tell them about introducing sources, or something that, so that we can avoid the idea of the dropped-in quote or the patchwork writing. I'm going to be able to do some writing inside here. This is an unlimited field, so I could begin to even do my first draft of this paragraph, or my thesis statement in the following open introductory argument, etc. All in the blank note cards in PowerNotes. And there's another place where the students can do that as well. Last on this page, I want to show you one more thing, that in addition to the easy on-off switch up here in the browser tray, this is the place that we want to reinforce that students who are using PowerNotes and have an issue with us need to contact PowerNotes directly. So this feedback button is one of the places where you can contact us. The other places in the drop-down up here, you can give us feedback up this place. You can do it on the web page too, but this is probably the most prominent and most used iteration of our feedback button. And the feedback button, let me stop to pause and explain one more thing rather than show. Students will often get to a page from a database article, for instance. In this case, I pulled up an article from JSTOR. This is not an example necessarily to show you the feature that I'm talking about, because this article does work. But a student might uncover an older PDF that does not have an OCR layer. And we need to apply an OCR layer, or else they'll abandon the source. And it could be that this is the best argument they have for a point they want to make in their paper. And it's the most important source to use. If they cannot copy, cut, and paste, they probably won't use it. So we're going to help ameliorate that too. By simply, this was what would happen. If this were a PDF that did not have a text layer on it, you try to use PowerNotes on it. In this case, I can, so it's not working, for the reasons that I was hinting at. But PowerNotes would detect that there needs to be a text layer add to this. You'd get a banner up here in the sidebar that would basically say, do you want us to OCR this for you? Students would click yes. This article would come up to us. We add the OCR layer up on top of it, the character recognition layer, send it back to the student. The student then can open this article in her browser, and PowerNotes will work. This is also a place where the distinction between the premium and the freemium account is important to note. In the free account, the one that costs nothing, the students do have access to the OCR feature, but there's a limit, and it's about 20 pages. And that's really, frankly, not a lot. It might be one PDF, it might be one and a piece of one. In the free side of PowerNotes, there is an unlimited OCR capability. Okay, so before I leave this part of PowerNotes, the browser extension part, any questions? And I'm going to go quickly then through a few other things while we're here, because there's a lot that I can show. I'm going to hint at some stuff and ask you to follow up with us if you want more detailed information. But this is the sort of first application of PowerNotes. The second application of PowerNotes is in the open web. Okay, at this point, we're not browser extension dependent. We're in the web. And this is primarily where a lot of the organizational stuff and the move from the work that I've done, the reading and writing and research work that I've done, more towards the presentation side of things. First thing I want to note is that this is now, these note cards are arrayed exactly as they were in my sidebar. And you can see all the work that I've collected. Repeat my notes, which are editable here as well. So I can still continue to work. I have the opportunity to create new blank note cards on this page too. Simple, the same button exists over here for me to create a note card. I can start moving things around. This might be valuable, but it belongs down here in this article, and I can arrange all of my note cards and get it closer to how I want my first draft to look. There's not a lot going on here because I didn't save a lot of note cards, but if this were an expansive project, you could also move longer distance by hitting this 3-button toggle. It's the same as we saw in the sidebar, so I can move it to a topic in my project, or I can copy it to another project. All of this can take place at the unit level as well. So I can take all the cards that are arrayed in this topic and move it elsewhere in this project or copy it to another project. So this you can see very quickly what we're focusing on here is ability for students to reorganize and streamline, make organization changes in PowerNotes on the website. There's a couple of other things that are evident here you might see popping up on my screen. These toggles mean something, and I want to show you quickly what each one means. I'm going to start with this one because this is circling back just a little bit. When I set up this project, it will open up on this web page, and I have the opportunity at this point to go to the project settings button, and I can make some major changes in my organization before I even get started. At this point, I can predetermine my source citation, and I can do that. It's, as I said, the default is MLA, but I can also choose another documentation standard here. I can create those. We talked about the course notes. I'm sorry, the source notes previously. This is where I could preset them. Anyway, you see the idea. I can move forward here, and this can all be done before I get started in a project. In addition, if I decided that I wanted to preset my topics, I would go over to the Manage Topics button, and I could come over here and create my outline before I get started. Or at this stage of the game, I can create my outline with new topics because my research has gotten much more robust. Or a third idea is I could come over here and I could begin to think about how I'm going to transition my organic thematic outline into a writing outline. And I can do that by introducing perhaps the topics or the organization that I've been instructed to use. I'm going to do this real quick just so you can see what's going on. We call this outline transformation. I'm not going to go through that either, but you can see what I've done here. So then when I go back out to my project, I can transition these note cards from a topic outline into my writing outline. And if I went through this whole process here, you can see how I can do it very quickly. Anyway, I hope you get the gist of that. I'm not going to go through all the steps. These other buttons, let me tell you quickly what they are. They're important to know for this reason. This button is the button that enables me to share this project with a colleague. If I'm working on a peer project, perhaps a full partner. Perhaps I just want to share this with my writing tutor or my teacher or my librarian, anybody who's going to help advise me on what I'm doing. Or the teacher or librarian might want to have an early view into what the student is doing. If the student sets up a project to share it directly with that person, then that person can come in and see all aspects of the student's work from the very beginning to the very end. And this is another place where we make it by practice an impossible circumstance for students to do the more purposeful kind of plagiarism that they might be engaged in. It's just a check. It's a way for the student to share the project early with an instructor, and it's a way for an instructor to advise a student very early. I have the role to invite anybody, I have the opportunity to invite anybody that I want to if I just put in their email address, and I can assign them one of these two roles. One is commenter, one is editor. I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to jump over here to a couple of projects that I've worked on. If this project were shared with me, I'm not the owner, but I'm a full participant in, I would get a project invitation. I click accept. Now I'm in, and I'm here and it says this project was shared with me by my colleague, Kyle. I am here as a full partner. I can edit, comment on, download, etc. That means I can come into this project at any stage along the way. I can add new research. I can change the research that others have done. I can add notes. I can add corroborate citation information. Everything that I've shown you so far, I can do as a full partner. If I were the owner of this project and had invited you to join it, then this is what it would look like. And you can see the people that I've invited to join this project include these 4 colleagues, including a teacher or 2, and they're all listed as editors. That means they have full responsibility or full capability to add, edit, and change the content, the research that I've collected. I can change them. Maybe they've overstepped their bounds, or maybe the roles have changed, and I can reassign them as simply a commenter. And that means going forward, all they can do is comment on the process, on the note cards themselves, or on the project themselves. Here's what a note card looks like. This is one in which I've used multiple times to demo the product. And so you can see an array of notes that I've sent back and forth between the instructor and myself. It happens in real time. So you would get it as an asynchronous, in an asynchronous platform, but in a synchronous manner. You'd come over to you immediately and you can respond to it from another location. You can get back to it and respond to it in your own time as well. So it serves. If I were getting notices about comments being made to me, I'd get a little alert up here in this button, and it would tell me that there's a note that I need to respond to. Okay. The other things that are going on here, just a quick look at how this stuff can be changed and moved around. It's of value to students who are working on multiple projects, or rather working in a collaborative setting. If I wanted to see what this looks like from the vantage point of when the work was done, I can resort all of this information by date, and I can look back over time and see. Sorry, I need to collapse that. And I can see the dates in which this project has work has been done inside this project. I could isolate a date and click on this, and it would take me to exactly what went on that date, who did what, etc. I can also sort all this information by source. It might be that I realize there's a seminal paper written about this topic, and I need to double check and make sure the student is working with it, or I can double check and see my role in how much activity is going on in that paper, and I can click back to it, go straight back to that source. These links remain active. And last, I can sort by editor. So if this were a collaborative project, I could take a quick look at who's done what. Okay, I am watching my clock. I want to make sure we have a few moments towards the end. So I'm going to show a few of the things that can be done now. We think of them as terms of exports. All of this work is taking place. I have an opportunity to export all of my work. I can first do it in an outline, which would take all of this information and just simply present it to me in a Word doc or a Google Doc format. And this is what it would look like. This is this project at an earlier iteration. So I have the topics that I've made here in highlight, dark, bold, and then I've got notes on this selection, and I've got the selection again, it's in quotation, exactly what I copied from the source. I've got a link back to that source, so I can go back and double check and see if this is still the valid source that I want to use. And then there's a blank note card in here that I've added some other stuff where I might have done some writing. Now, I will make this caveat. At this point, we're outside PowerNotes. This is a Word document, so this quote becomes editable now. And this is a place where students need to be careful so that they understand what the difference is between a full quote and one that might have been edited for content or meaning, etc. But that's a teaching moment. Nevertheless, you're protected by quotation marks still. What's happened, of course, is my writing is now delineated from the source material that I've collected. But I can begin to transition. This is where the real meat and potatoes of a first draft is going to take place. And this is also where students are often surprised by how much work they've done. That's been one of the sort of eye-opening experiences that students have reported to us, the teachers have reported to us too about students. Okay, this is what it would look like if it were a Word document. I can also export this as in Excel format, and there are different ways in which that it's going to look. We have these 5 options for our Excel spreadsheet. The first 2 are very similar. I'll show you one in a moment. The third one is important. 2 of these are important for researchers, for law programs more than they are undergraduate researchers. So we're not going to dive into that. This topic source, if I were to pull that up, this is a different project, but it's what it would look like if I were looking at a project with these topic headings. This is a rhetorical analysis assignment in a writing program. I've been tasked with going into 4 different articles and taking a look at each and evaluating each according to its criteria of relevance, authority, accuracy, etc. This format came to us at the request of the critical writing program at University of Pennsylvania, where they do teach the lit review as an outcome. So this process will allow students to develop an analysis and a synthesis in one place, all at a glance, so they can see the difference between those 2 rhetorical practices. And it's also the place where graduate students and students in upper division courses can see the lit review taking shape. But at Penn, for instance, they take the students and I ask them to go to the end of this array. This is all the notes that I took on this particular reading. I have 4 readings here. I go to the last.
Jimmy,
Yes.
I hate to interrupt you. You're on a roll. We're getting a couple of comments. Are you showing a Word document?
My goodness, I am, and you're not seeing it. Oh,
right,
okay.
Right. I think it's just showing that one window. Just want to let you know.
Thank you for letting me know. Yes, that is not a very. Oh boy. Okay, let me just. I won't spend time going over this again. This is the lit review. I'm sorry. The Excel export. That's a source across the top. I'm sorry. A source down the left column, and the topic across the top. And it's the one that I was hinting that resembles a lit review or can be made to look as a lit review. The second export is exactly the same material as this, just the X and Y axes are reversed. And that was at the request of a graduate program that was using this to teach the lit review. I didn't show you a moment ago when I was unaware. This is what the Word document looks like as we export it as an outline. I won't repeat everything I said there. And one of the other options that when students do use the source evaluation tab, this exports as an Excel spreadsheet that looks like this. This is, I preset the CRAP acronym for currency, relevancy, accuracy, authority, purpose, and reliability across the first row. And then this is the articles that I was reviewing in my research project. And this is me just filling in the blanks. I just put take notes, but this is where the notes would take. So this is a way that a student could look very easily at her sources and determine where each stands next to the other as to the most reliable, most useful, most current, most effective sources for her purposes. And this is also where information literacy is widely taught. I want to jump quickly. There are other things that can happen on this export page, but I want to make sure to cover one more thing before we run out of time. And that's our library feature. In addition to the citation generation stuff, this is something that would be of great interest, I suspect, to a lot of librarians in the room. We have have begun to work with the discovery layer. So if we were working with the discovery layer in your library system, students who are using PowerNotes, when they do a Google search, let me show you what it looks like. Let me get this out of the way. If I were doing this project and it was on climate change, most students are going to go to Google before they do anything else. And whether it's in the Omnibar here at the top or in the search bar, PowerNotes will, let's get that out of the way, PowerNotes will work through the discovery layer at your library. Primo Ex Libris, for instance, and this is an example of one of our partner institutions at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. So we're using their discovery layer. And so I put in climate change as my search term. It's going to deliver to me all of the results that are available to me as a student or a faculty member for that matter from the UTK libraries. So in addition to all the sources, information is going to be delivered by Google. And we're not getting rid of that. We're simply saying among the Google searches, this is what's available to you from the UTK libraries. If I click on any one of these links, for instance, it's going to take me to the doorstep of the UTK portal, library portal. I can't go any further. I have no credentials, but this is what it would look like if it brought me there. We work with UTK to have a single sign-on, so it goes into the library. In other instances, it's just a portal, and the student would have to log in. That's a powerful tool, and we know that it can be used very broadly, is used very broadly, but it also can be turned off. In other words, if I didn't want to use this and PowerNotes is in the way, there's a way we can turn off the PowerNotes aspect of the Google search right here, if I hit this button. I am looking at the clock to be sure that I don't go overextended, and I don't know if I've rushed through everything that too much perhaps, but if there are questions that I can field before the end of the hour, I'm happy to take those now.
Hey, Jimmy, I won't bother with raising my hand. Thanks so much for this. This was fascinating. This is Susan from Austin Community College. And I'm sort of thinking ahead about how I might use this in my classes. And if I'm teaching, I don't know, half a dozen of them, I'm wondering about class management and if there's any LMS integration. I understand how powerful this could be for individual students working on their individual projects. Would I just need to wait for a student to share their project with me to see what they're doing? And would I be fielding, 150 different requests to do that? Or is there a structure in which this can happen that would give me a little bit more class management option? Or
I'm writing notes as you speak, Susan, because there are several questions embedded there, I think. That's okay. And actually, Todd, if I can engage you, because I know you have a higher understanding of what our timeline is for LMS integration. Can you?
Yeah, you bet. So we're working on that right now with the different LMS providers. We've got some single sign-on with some of them, right, which really just provides access to the software and validates them as a credentialed learner at your institution. We do not have the deeper integration at this point, but that's something that we're working on right now. So I think you'll probably see that within the next 4 to 6 months, where you'll also be able to push some of those different rubrics for evaluating sources and things like that directly through the LMS. So that's where I think it's going to be a powerful tool. But you're right now you will be getting, and we've heard this from some of our other partner schools where they've got large groups of student users, where they get these notifications and they have to go through and look at all of that stuff. It can be, if you're teaching a course with 200 students, it can be a little bit challenging. But we do have faculty who are really passionate about that as well. But I do think that'll make it much easier to engage and interact with students once that LMS integration, that deeper integration is ready to go.
Right. I mean, there's nothing that's going to make teaching writing classes less labor intensive than it already is, but I just wouldn't want to like double the amount of work involved.
Yeah, that's very true.
I did have a question about ADA compliance. Is there anything that you'd need to know about using this tool with students who have vision impairment?
So we've got a VPAT, and I think it's WCAG 2.0 compliant. That's where we are. And I think we've got another level of compliance coming in here. It's on our roadmap for the next couple of months, but that's important to us. And so we've got and that's also important to our institutions. It's important to our learners that they have that accessibility. So you can find that directly on our website, that documentation right there.
Great, thank you. And I have one more question, then I will cede the floor. In terms of source types, a lot of my students use multimedia sources, podcasts, YouTube videos, TED Talks, things like that. Is that something that can be accounted for, or are we just looking at mostly static documents?
Mostly static at this point. Again, that's another thing that's on our roadmap. Video is the next tool to be able to cite and annotate. Thanks
so much.
Thank you. And Jan, I'm looking at your note. So the reality is, as far as students and onboarding them and training them, we have, I think, we pointed out at the very beginning of the demo, there's a link. If you go up to powernotes.com or blog.powernotes.com/help, we have a whole series of student tutorials, video tutorials that really guide students through using PowerNotes step by step. And sorry, Jimmy, you need to go, I think.
I do, but I want to add a comment to that. And I do apologize for cutting out early. I'm going to leave it to Todd here, but I have a meeting with another group of librarians like right immediately. And it's very exciting to have this back to back. And nevertheless, it feels like I'm shortchanging here, and I don't mean to. In addition to the tutorial materials that we've done, we also will very eagerly work with different classes and students and one-on-one. Like a class introduction, or we've done a series of like tech hours, schedule a couple of hours with you, and then, join at Thursday night at 2 o'clock or Thursday night at 7 o'clock or something like that. We can do that as well as the onboarding stuff. And I apologize to the group here, but I must leave. But Todd will take over here. You're in great hands, and I appreciate everyone, your time and attention. Thank you for letting me be part of this, and I look forward to ongoing conversations.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, so we do have the self video tutorials that are available on our blog. But as Jimmy said, we do a lot of training with classes. We, especially in the last 3 years, obviously, we've been doing an awful lot of Zoom training and office hours and that kind of thing. But what we found, we don't expect the schools and the institutions to be our technical support. One thing that Jimmy didn't show in the sidebar, there is a feedback button which allows any learner or faculty member to contact us directly. They can submit a support ticket to us, and we'll actually go through and debug the page that they're submitting if they're running into an error or an issue with it. So yeah, we want to make sure that we work on every source that's out there, whether it's your library database, a textbook, the open web, and PDFs. So we try to do as much training and support as we possibly can, Jan. And we're always available to do whatever anybody wants us to do in that as a part of that equation. Any other questions? So it's very secure. We've gone through and done the HECVAT paperwork with EDUCAUSE. We don't track what anybody is doing. The only time that we ever see anything that's going on within the space is when someone actually goes in and engages with the content. So that's important to us. Privacy is really important. We don't even want that information. We don't want to know who's doing what. It's very secure. It's all housed in the cloud. So we work with our big cloud provider, AWS, like probably just about everybody else.
Todd, if this were something that, say, one or a small group of instructors wanted to pilot, is there a sort of a setup for that, or?
So I think I can't really talk about the pricing because we've got special pricing with TCCTA that's not available to other institutions. So I need to be careful how I tread here. But I think our pricing is pretty amazingly affordable for Texas community colleges. So we have done some pilots in the past. We're kind of to the point now where we're beyond that as far as an institution goes. But if there is a class that would like to try that, you're welcome to reach out to me and we can talk about that. And I'd also be happy to engage with you on the pricing. It's very affordable. I think Richard probably would confirm that.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised. But I think anybody with questions on that, definitely follow up with Todd. We'll send out the information so you'll know the resources that were shared today, and then the contact information. So the PowerNotes folks, Todd, you were at our convention in Frisco last month, and you had a chance to meet a bunch of our folks while you were there. I talked with some people, especially librarians, after that session y'all did, and I just wanted some feedback. And it's fun, I may have told you this, Todd, but I always say, I don't know much, but I know people who know a lot. And so I really rely on our members to say, hey, are we onto something here? Is this something you're interested in? And the feedback was enthusiastic. I mean, it wasn't just one more thing out in the world. This is like, no, this is different. We need to pay attention to it. So that kind of made me think, I think we're on the right track here. We need to engage our folks. And a lot of it, I think, is just letting y'all know it exists. I think y'all are going to know where it belongs in your world and how best to apply it. So I'm going to be very interested to see how this proceeds. Is it something that y'all are interested in? And if so, how does it show up in your work? How are y'all finding it's most useful and is going to have the biggest impact? So as y'all are going along, not to impose, but I would love to hear from y'all. If you're seeing that there's a real application here, keep me educated on it. Let me know how it's working and the difference it's making, because that really helps me kind of steer on this end. What should we be emphasizing? Who should we be engaging? What are we needing? So, absolute first off was this conversation the convention and this conversation today. I appreciate y'all making time and hearing what we've been working on here. So if you have any other questions, definitely reach out to Todd and he'll be able to help you out. Todd, go ahead.
I wanted to just add one last thing. So Susan, back to your question about piloting. Don't forget that there's the free option. Anybody can create a free account. So if you wanted to experiment with a class or a smaller class, that's a great way to do that. But the other thing I want to add is that with that institutional license, if your school does decide to make that leap, that provides a PowerNotes account to every faculty member, staff at the school, as well as all of the students.
Right.
Okay.
And that really helps, I think, on your deployment, that you're not going to have it within your IT department. You're not going to always be bumping up against walls of who gets what, which I know is often the headache that faculty and librarians have.
I would think that there would be a lot of applications from this from the administrative side when they're trying to get reports put together that they're having to present to, from everything from, bond issues to, whatever their issues are, that would have a lot of applications for them as well.
Yeah, and I think, just as I was looking at it, I thought, if you could go in and just see what a student's working on while they're doing it, and you can recognize, wait, they're going off track here,
Yeah.
or whatever. Boy, the learning that can happen when you can give that kind of feedback could be really powerful. And especially if it's inside of an LMS where you're not working 48 hours a day on, if there's a way to streamline that. But
That's really true, Richard. I've got an instructor at Berkeley who uses PowerNotes, and she said, I won't teach academic writing without this because it gives me the opportunity to kind of intervene before somebody submits a paper and it's riddled with errors or they've gone down the wrong path. I can help correct them and bring them back to where they need to be. So they get a little insight before that paper is even submitted, which can be helpful. Again, it's time intensive, but I think also so is teaching writing. So
yeah.
But it's overwhelming if a student gets a paper back and there's just 100 things they have to go in and fix, that they just don't know where to start. And this way you're right there where they need it. So.
Right.
Well, again, thanks everybody for making time today. I know everybody's just insanely busy, but we will make this video available on our YouTube channel, and love to hear your feedback as you go forward on this.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it so
everyone.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.